If you've never heard of Loveless, then you better buckle up for something pretty uncomfortable because this was part of my gay awakening in a bad way. Loveless is a josei manga published in Zero Sum magazine in Japan, written by Yun Koga. It centers around a 12-year-old boy named Ritsuka who meets a 20-year-old guy named Sobi, and Ritsuka kind of becomes this guy's collared-up femboy Pokemon as they fight other femboy Pokemon as they try to figure out the mystery of his brother's murder. Oh gosh, is this the reason I like being collared and tied up? Jeez. Here's the thing, for those of you that do know Loveless, this manga is still going. Like, the mangaka plans on ending the series at 15 volumes. They're on volume 13. I'm not kidding. This started in 2002. It's been going for over 20 years. My yaoi-hungry younger self ate whatever I could find back in the day, but even back then, I found this one unsettling. Oh god, I remember how popular this was. I was never into it personally, but I knew so many girls who were obsessed with it. The poster child of the yaoi BL craze of my middle school days. Now you may notice all of these characters, well, almost all of them, have cute cat ears on their heads. And that's not just a stylistic choice. The ears on their heads mean they're virgins. And when they aren't virgins, their ears fall off. Can you imagine how messed up that would be in real life? Like, you have their teacher still having ears and she gets made fun of for it, but what if there's a kid that doesn't have their ears? Everyone knows what happened to them and you can't hide it. They turned a made-up concept, like virginity, into a real-life social construct that opens everyone up for ridicule. I couldn't imagine how difficult that would be in real life. And do you know how he meets Sobi, his brother's friend? He literally waits for him outside the school like a stalker and just grabs him while Ritsuka is running. Like, how many red flags do you want to give off, my guy? And he's all like, I'm your dead brother's old friend. And when I first read that, I was immediately like, oh, this guy is lying to get close to this kid. That's not what happened, but I mean, come on, how could you not think that? And Ritsuka is the stoic loner type because he's upset at his brother's being dead, so obviously that would get to him. And Sobi just starts hanging out with him, sort of like going on dates, so that they can get closer. And it's supposed to be Sobi being nice and extending his hand to Ritsuka in his time of need, but it doesn't really translate well when all you can think of is how they're clearly trying to groom this kid. This dude literally kisses him. How screwed up can you get?
Sobi, 落とすってどういうこと？俺の耳を落とすってこと？
今はしない。
Not yet. Not yet. So you mean you intend to? Bro, there's an 8-year difference between you two. Oh, thank goodness you plan on waiting for Ritsuka to grow up, but that doesn't excuse literally everything you're doing. They fight by having two people, someone that can cast spells, and the amount of words they used for the spell dictates the strength of the spell. Like, burst is a low-level spell, while protect, complete defense is a high-level spell. Fighting with slam poetry. Sobi can cast higher level spells and uses them to protect Ritsuka from random kids that want to fight him in the middle of the park, like random Pokemon trainers picking fights with you out in public. There's a fighter and a sacrifice. The fighter does the fighting, but the sacrifice takes the damage. Or the amount of damage that the fighter takes, the sacrifice also takes. You know, the anime was never actually entirely clear on how this works. So you're able to fight with your full potential, but if you're too brash and taking damage, the person you've devoted yourself to protect is the one that dies in your stead.
気がつくと、あいつ、本当に兄貴の友達なの？
You're asking yourself this now? After you decided to go on a date with him alone? Not only that, but also Ritsuka has amnesia and can't remember who he was from like 2 years ago. It's like he was a totally different person starting 2 years ago. And his mom, having had one of her kids dead and the other becoming a stoic asshole kid, she kind of breaks down, freaks out, and abuses her kid. So not only do we have grooming, we have domestic violence as well. Man, this kid is going through it. This dude pulls an Edward Cullen and randomly arrives at this kid's house, knocking on the window to secretly meet him. Ritsuka's brother, Seimei, left him a will on a Windows Media Player video. Damn, that's hilarious. But this is how Ritsuka finds out that Seimei was murdered by a weird secret organization called Septible Moon, and he told Sobi to protect his little brother if he died. Thus, Ritsuka has a delegated groomer via his brother.
戦いに備えるんだ。
どういう戦いだ？
だから、舌を使って、時には噛んだり噛まれたり。
The worst part is that this show is targeted at girls and is still somehow popular enough to be serialized. Now, I'm not saying that girls are okay with grooming, but the people who've been reading this manga since release and read it to this day makes me think that maybe they're a little bit more comfortable with grooming than they should be. I bet they do some math about him being, I don't know, part cat, so 12 years old in cat years is technically old enough for blah, blah, blah. We have the weird 300-year-old lolly vampire argument all over again. Now, with that being said, I cannot tell you how much pushback I got for just announcing this video on Twitter. And more importantly, how fervently people were quick to defend it. Now, I will make the distinction. They were primarily defending the manga, not the anime, which I fully plan on reading the entirety of in another video. When I first read it when I was younger, I read the first 4 volumes before I had to be like, oh gosh, this is way too icky. No, I cannot do this. Regardless, here are some of the things that I read. I don't know what you're talking about. This manga was peak back in middle school, and I will not stand for this BL slander. Wrong. This is a story about love in all the ways love can exist. Also, I know them personally. They're happily married. Ugh. That person fits the stereotype of annoying YouTube reviewer to a T. Does minimum research, ignores cultural context, doesn't bother with anything, just clickbaity content pointing at gross, weird Japanese stuff. Loser most likely wasn't even alive when peak. The last one specifically grinds my gears because yes, I was alive when this was being published. And the cultural context thing, that sounds like they're one step away from saying, well, actually, in Japan, the age of consent is fuck you. First of all, how dare these people assume I'm bashing on it just to bash on it for content? I am a fervent reader of boys love, yaoi, yuri, and girls love. I have read more Yuri and Girls Love than I have read Yaoi and Boys Love, but that doesn't mean I just haven't read them. Therapy Game right now is my favorite, along with the weird standalone prequel one. But dang, Mad K, that stuff's on a different level. That one, I like Mad K for everything that it is, knowing that it's really messed up in weird, not weird ways like this one, weird ways and more digestible weird. If you're into The Haunting of Adeline, then you'll probably like Mad K. But if you're someone that likes The Court of Thorns and Roses, unsubscribe from my channel. There's nothing wrong with liking A Court of Thorns and Roses, but everyone told me that it's smut, and it's not. I read 80% of that book before I put it on my DNF list. The people who think that A Court of Thorns and Roses is smut are people whose man can't get them off and whose favorite position is missionary. I'm sorry, you suck. If you just like it because it's a nice book, that's different. That's entirely different. Like it because you think it's smut, that's where I got a problem. I was lied to. Now hang on, but I'm getting off track. The positive about all this backlash of me saying Loveless is creepy and gross and weird is that it sounds like the manga actually gets really good. And I remember someone saying, I didn't grab a screenshot of it, saying not to judge something just based on how icky it makes you feel, which is absolutely true. I get that. I don't quite feel like, at least in terms of this anime, it really falls in line with that. But to appease all of you who are no doubt not watching this video, because I don't think any of the people who are actually commenting this actually watch my videos, I'm gonna read the manga. Wait a week, maybe 2, depends on when I get this video out. I will have an entire video based on the manga out and ready for you, okay? Okay.
そんなにいじめられたいなら俺が立ち直る。
キヨ、俺は変態じゃない。
People who aren't perverts don't make sexual double entendres to kids. Even your peers know you're full of shit. No, I'm not a pervert. Anyway, Ritsuka, can you penetrate my ear for an earring? And also let me hold you in a totally appropriate, not creepy way. It's fine, I'm not a pervert, I swear.
年、いくつです？
23です。
俺、年上ダメなんですよ。
Yeah, we all knew you didn't like people your age.
I'm not a groomer. I'm just a loser.
For some reason, Sobi won't tell Ritsuka about Septimal Moon, and so we're left floundering around with Sobi being creepily obsessive about Ritsuka, and Ritsuka just being more and more frustrated. It's difficult to watch. I get that this is supposed to be focusing more on the personal lives and, I don't want to say romantic aspect of the story, but what they think is the romantic aspect of the story, but we're stuck with the plot not moving forward, which is just worse. The worst part is Yuiko. She's just some girl that isn't very bright, but is trying so hard to connect with Ritsuka because no one else will, and she's sometimes making progress, but Ritsuka is obsessed with Sobi and the mystery behind his brother, so it's preventing him from making friends and actually developing a healthy connection with someone, which is really what he needs right now, and Yubiko is being bullied for trying to be nice. It's heartbreaking. So these randos show up from Septimal Moon and are all like, hey, if we fight and you win, then you get this letter from our teacher because, you know, Sobi isn't saying anything to you. Why not get info straight from the source, which is just so weird on so many levels. They make it sound like Sobi used to work for Septimal Moon, which is why he's so hush-hush about it. And they win and get that letter from them, which I feel like now would be a great time to just tell him what's going on if you're just going to give him the letter. We get small flashbacks from Sobi about his training in Septimal Moon and how he was basically tortured, which is why he's able to endure so much pain.
リツカは子供だね。俺は支配されたいの。
Excuse you? Literally for no reason, Sobi butts heads with Ritsuka's teacher and is just a massive jerk to her. On his own, he fights these kids that are apparently some sort of experiment where they can't feel any pain. They're like grown in a lab or something called Zeros. What I don't get is that they do these rap battles over and over and they don't really explain why. Like, what value does this sort of fight bring compared to just throwing a punch? There isn't a contest where there's a game master or a Grand Prix. I guess it's just like a way to make sure no one else around them gets hurt. But other than that, they don't explain why they fight the way they do. And of course, after Sobi wins, these kids don't have parents, so he lets them stay with him. And even his roommate is like, bro, this is super sketch. Are you a pedo? Like, how many red flags does this guy need to wave before you just report him? He ain't even subtle about it. You know, this whole story revolves around Ritsuka having multiple different mysteries, but it's really just a setup as to why someone would willingly be groomed. Oh, his brother is mysteriously murdered. Trauma. Oh, his mom hurts him and doesn't really love him. Trauma. Wow, he has no one in life that he can connect to. Sounds like the perfect situation for someone to be manipulated. A situation that would allow a groomer to swoop in and not get caught. Like, all these elements are instilled to make Ritsuka an interesting character. But it really works better on a commentary of how kids can end up in really bad situations. But that's not what they're going for. Like, there's potential to make it a legitimately engaging story on a very uncomfortable topic. And it's just tossed aside for a really bad romance setup in what is clearly a toxic relationship. Here's how I know this is messed up. This wouldn't look good even if their ages were the same. But I guess that's kind of what makes this story so interesting. It's kind of like that weird fascination you get listening to true crime. Or, and I don't feel like this is the most correct way to say it, like watching a train wreck. So subscribe if you want me to cover the entirety of the manga up until the most recent release of the chapter, because it's still not finished. But I'm gonna read up everything up until the most recent point. So much of this plot, and boy, I mean multiple episodes, is just Ritsuka being sad and edgy and fighting with Sobi. And Sobi being him. Nothing is answered, nothing progresses, stuff just happens, they squabble, and nothing seems to get resolved. Things just either get weirder or stay the same. The writer decided they needed to continue the plot somehow, and so now we got two lesbians making out in a train. Why? Who are these people? I don't know. This just kind of dropped on you. At least they're the same age. For reasons we aren't explained, Sobi decides that he's just going to fight everyone on his own. Even though that severely weakens him by a lot. I know he's supposed to protect Ritsuka, but he can't do that if he's dead. He doesn't explain why he's doing this. He doesn't really explain why he does anything, to be honest. I think the real villain is Sobi at this point. Ritsuka figures out Sobi has been avoiding him, and so he figures out where Sobi is and finds out he got wrecked by the lesbians. Now, he's too weak to fight because he's a massive idiot. Apparently, this blue-haired girl, Nagisa, is the one that creates artificial fighters, the Zeros, the ones that can't feel pain. And she's in some sort of competition to make the best fighter, or at least a fighter that can beat Sobi, which she sort of did, but it was 2-on-1, so it doesn't really count. Do they explain why they want to make these fighters? No, of course not, because answering our questions ruins the mystery, and where's the fun in understanding a story? I understand the part of these stories isn't the battles or the mystery, but rather it's supposed to be the interpersonal relationships between the characters. The appeal of these shows are the emotions that each person feels and how they react to their situation. But as someone who's watched a fair bit and read a fair bit of stories like this, not only does the groomer vibes make it hard to watch, it's also just so unbearably slow. And these characters do things without any reason. We're left in the dark about the antagonist, and we keep watching and waiting for some sort of explanation that never comes. I'm sure this would be more interesting if Sobi and Ritsuka were the same age and could actually be a viable couple, but they aren't. Even the characters, Sobi himself, talks about how he doesn't plan on pursuing any sort of relationship like that, thank goodness, but what can they do now? Either Ritsuka needs to find someone else to bond with so that they can fight, or Sobi and Ritsuka are going to bond, and we're going to see a minor kissing a 20-year-old more often, and that's weird to watch in itself, and it happens a lot more than I'm making it seem. I'm just cutting out all the other parts where they kiss because it's gross, but they do it a lot. In this show, everyone has a true name. Like, Sobi's true name is Beloved, and just to really drive the point home, Ritsuka's true name is, yeah, you guessed it, Loveless. Can you get any more on the nose? And you're supposed to find the other person that shares your true name. Like, Sayame, Ritsuka's brother, was also Beloved. So that means there is someone out there meant for Ritsuka that isn't Sobi. And I wish they'd get on to finding whoever that is because I'm sick of seeing this. I think the purpose of all these fights they get in is so that Ritsuka can understand like different types of love. He's getting multiple people's perspective of how they approach their relationship. Even if I don't really think that the enemies they encounter differ too much from each other, I just can't really rationalize why they're doing these fights from a plot perspective, so I'm trying to think of it more from a theme perspective. At least with the lesbians, one of them loses their zero powers, meaning they can feel pain again, and even though now they're both different, she still accepts her for who she is. I think the fights are a means for Ritsuka to grow as a person. Just in case I didn't drive home how creepy Sobi is, while Sobi is stalking Ritsuka on a friend date he had, he thinks he sees Ritsuka kissing his classmate. And that makes him upset, apparently, even trying to get Ritsuka onto the Ferris wheel. Just him and Ritsuka. Why? Well, they don't really say why, but like, you can tell why. Man, I hate this guy. And even Ritsuka's therapist has this weird infatuation with him. Oh, what is wrong with these people? This guy right here, Sobi's roommate, is the only person that thinks this whole situation is fucked. Now buckle up, because this is when things get weird. At first you're thinking, oh, they don't know how to end the show because they caught up to the manga and they start rambling about how much Ritsuka has grown and how he actually likes his friends now. Wow, he's really gotten better. Who cares about that whole Septible Moon stuff? Yeah, whatever. But then he was just hanging out with friends when he finds a code on their game console. A code just like the one Septible Moon sent him in that weird memo like forever ago that they never expanded on. So he realizes this code is actually instructions to reach a certain floor of his brother's online video game. So he starts playing the game just to figure out the meaning of the message. So he reaches the level he needed to get to, and then someone drugs him with this weird incense. Then the ghost of his brother, Yaoi Hands It All, starts giving him these weird visions, one of Seime's death and how he was burned alive, then his mom trying to burn herself, and the house down, and the whole town becoming deserted, with his friends being either kidnapped or strung up or who knows what, then Sobi trying to strangle him to death, telling him that if he dies in this dream, that the old Ritsuka, the one before his amnesia, will come back, and Ritsuka is like, bro, I just started enjoying being alive. Like, I just got the will to live. I changed my mind. I don't want the old Ritsuka back. And they do the classic, my will is super strong and breaks the dream curse thing. He wakes up, everything is normal now. Then he confronts Sobi, asking him, hey, if my brother was alive and he gave the order to kill me, would you do it? All while his brother's ghost is watching. And Sobi says, I'll kill myself before I kill you, and apparently the ghost of the brother has an aside where he explains that weird dream is apparently Ritsuka's future, his destiny, if he loses his will to live. Super weird and cryptic and literally everything we've been waiting for in this story, but no, we have to save all this interesting stuff for the last episode, and they never got a season 2. They focused so much on the uncomfortable groomer vibes, they shot themselves in the foot of ever getting a season 2. This manga, this story, has 13 volumes of manga behind it. I think we covered like 3 volumes maybe with this anime, and from what it looks like, it seems like they're really moving past the weird Soulby Ritsuka thing and going on to an actual story. But as you guessed, this anime never got an English localization because who in their right mind would want to pick this up? For all of you with your morbid curiosity, go ahead and subscribe for the manga video that's coming up next. Tell me how you feel about the Loveless anime. I have no doubt I'm gonna get people talking about the manga anyway, but this is specifically supposed to focus on the anime and the manga is supposed to come afterward. I set this up intentionally. I hope you enjoyed this video. Stay beautiful and keep playing.